Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Kitchen Live with me, Lou, from Crumbs and Corkscrews. Welcome to my kitchen. Welcome to a beautiful sunny morning here in the Cotswolds. Thank you for joining me. If this is your first time with Kitchen Live, hi, my name is Lou. I am the dessert-obsessed baker here at Crumbs and Corkscrews, and you're either joining me via the Facebook page or the YouTube page on live, or you're watching this on catch up. Whatever way, I'd love to know where you are in the world. Like I say, I'm here in the beautiful sunny autumn Cotswolds this morning. It has got a bit of a chill in the air, but the sun is streaming through, it's just the perfect autumn day. And for that day, then we're going to get. Well, we did a live on Wednesday this week, and we did my ultimate autumn dessert, and that was a apple crumble cake. And I put it to you guys what we wanted to do next, and we've gone for another classic. We've gone for Black Forest, and we're doing cupcakes. You know, we've done the Black Forest cookies, we've done a Black Forest no-bake cheesecake. So it was about time we did cupcakes, and I love a cupcake and I love Black Forest. So that's where we're going. Just give it a few seconds, as always. Yeah, I got my fingers pointing in the right direction of 15 minutes. But yeah, do grab yourself a coffee. I hope you're still curled up in your PJs on the sofa on a Sunday morning with a coffee. Going to do a little bit of baking. I'll be going through, as always, the recipe, and then you can have a go yourself. But as it says, let's bake. So, I've just been juggling with sound and light today. The radio mics still aren't working, so apologies. This is via the microphone on my MacBook, and we've got some reflectors going on and things. It's that autumn light again. So, but hopefully you guys can see everything that's going on. Please do let me know if there's any issues. But we're going to be making Black Forest cupcakes. Now, this picture here, as you can see, that way, is not quite a cupcake, but this is what we did last year on Kitchen Live. These are the Black Forest cookie sandwiches, and they're sort of a similar-esque combination. I have tried the recipe out, just haven't had a chance to take any pictures, which is why you can see that. But it's got those three key elements that we want. The rich chocolate, the really lovely whipped cream, and we've got those cherries as well. This recipe is going to make about 12 to 16 cupcakes. It depends how big you like to make your cakes, really. But we're going for 12 to 16. I am going to be doing a half recipe, but the ingredients list that you have will be for the full recipe. They're really easy. We're not going to be doing any fancy techniques or anything like that, but we're going to be looking at a cherry filling and the chocolate cake and a whipped cream, buttercream, which all come together. Taste-wise, I mean, for me, it's my favorite combination, except for chocolate and raspberry. But the rich, slight bitterness of the chocolate, those tart cherries, and then we've got that lovely sweet whipped cool cream. They are simple and they are so delicious. There is absolutely no cons in my book, except making sure you get one before everybody else snaffles. So that's what we're doing. Let's get into our ingredients, and then we're going to get some baking on. So for the cupcakes then, it is a very standard cupcake recipe. We're using a butter and sugar rather than an oil recipe for this, but we'll just quickly go through the ingredients. So you're going to need 200 grams of salted butter, slightly salted butter. This is at room temperature and it's softened. You can use unsalted butter. If you're using unsalted butter, just add a pinch of fine sea salt. I say sea salt rather than table salt, because table salt can feel quite metallic-y in taste. So using a sea salt, which is nice, has nothing else in it there, is perfect if you're adding salt into your bakes. Excuse me. So 200 grams of salted butter. Like I say, this is softened. It's been at room temperature, and we'll talk about that when we get into our baking. Remember, I'm doing a half recipe here, so my quantities might look a little bit smaller. We're going to be using 200 grams of caster sugar, just regular white caster sugar here. Oops, we've got those highlights blowing out a little bit on the light. So apologies. Just regular white caster sugar or superfine sugar, whatever it's called, where you are. And you could use a vanilla version of this if you want to, but we don't need anything fancy. No brown sugar or anything here, just regular white caster sugar. We're also going to need 4 eggs, 4 medium eggs at room temperature. Always have your eggs at room temperature. When you're baking, it makes the proteins easier to break down and mix in and combine. And also, when you put them in the oven, the heat of the oven isn't working to get these up to their optimum temperature for doing their thing. Like I say, I'm doing half recipe, so you'll need 4 of those. And then we're going to be using self-raising flour and cocoa powder here. Now, I'm based in the UK, as most of you guys know. If you don't have self-raising flour where you are, you can use a plain or all-purpose flour and add the baking powder in, and I will put all of that, as usual, into the recipe post. But self-raising flour has our raising agents already in there. Oh, there we go. I've already made a mess. It is really easy to make your own. 100 grams of flour to 1 teaspoon of baking powder. But for this, because we're going to be using a cocoa powder as well, we only want 175 grams there. And then the cocoa powder, then I am using, you can see it's really dark. This is an unsweetened cocoa powder, and this is now becoming more easier to buy in the supermarkets. I saw it yesterday when I was in Waitrose, but I've had this for a while. I bought it on Amazon. It gives you a really dark, deep, chocolatey flavor, but also color, like an Oreo, rather than a processed like regular cocoa powder that you see is quite pale in color in comparison. So I'm using this to give me that really dark Black Forest chocolate gâteau sort of look to my cupcake. You can use regular cocoa powder if you can't get this or you don't want to use this. It's perfectly fine. It does give a slightly richer flavor to the chocolate cake, but it's not a must-have. You can easily substitute that out. We're also going to put in a little bit of soured cream. You could use creme fraiche or natural yogurt if you want. I like sour cream for this. And that is going to work with the cocoa powder and the fat from the butter just to keep it moist. Cocoa powder can be quite drying whenever you put it into a bake, regardless of what type of cocoa powder you're using. So adding a little bit of like a liquid type fat, whereas butter would be more solid, just helps keep your cake lovely and moist and prevents it from completely drying out. So sour cream or creme fraiche or natural yogurt, either or can be substituted. I'm using sour cream today. And one last thing for our cakes that I'm going to add in is a little bit of coffee powder. I'm going to mix this with a little bit of water just to make a little bit of a paste. Again, this is entirely optional, but the coffee really works with that cocoa. Excuse me, I have hiccups. With the cocoa powder and everything else going on there to really intensify that chocolate flavor. I love adding just a teaspoon of coffee powder into my chocolate cakes for that. You won't taste the coffee. It's not going to have any coffee effect on your cake. It's just going to make that lovely flavor. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab a sip. Now, for the cherry filling, when you think of a Black Forest cake, it's got that lovely cherry filling. I have made the filling already this morning because it needs time to cook down. But all I'm doing there is I'm just using a can of cherries in syrup. You could use fresh cherries if you wanted, or frozen cherries. Cooking that down with a little bit of caster sugar and corn flour and a little bit of cherry. I've used cherry brandy, but you use kirsch or a cherry liqueur. And I've cooked that down, and we'll have a look at that later. You can, if you want to, use like maraschino cherries that come in the syrup for your cocktails, or you could use a morello cherry jam or something like that. I had the cherries in the cupboard that I needed to eat, so that's why we're using those. But yes, they're already on the hob there, and we'll be looking at that later. And then finally, for our topping, for our buttercream, we're going to be making a whipped cream buttercream rather than, I don't just want to pipe whipped cream onto these, which is whipped cream with sweetened cream is very traditional, but I'm going to go for a whipped cream buttercream. So again, some butter. I've got 150 grams here of the salted butter again. Icing sugar, which I haven't weighed out because it goes everywhere, but you'll be needing some of that, or powdered sugar or confectioner's sugar. Excuse me. A little bit of vanilla extract. This is our homemade one, which you can find out on the blog. Really easy to make and still going strong. I made this particular batch, a 1.5 litres of it in COVID, and it's still going strong. And of course, you'll need some double cream or heavy cream, and I've got that here in my jar. So there are your ingredients. They are pretty much simple ingredients. There's nothing fancy unless you're using the fancy cherries or the particular cherry brandy. The other thing you can use for the alcohol, and I know it's not necessarily cherry, but it really works really well with this, is the Chambord, is the raspberry liqueur, because it's dark raspberries there, and that works really well. So if you've got that in the cupboard, it's not then technically Black Forest, but it does work really, really well. So let's get into it. Let's crack on with some baking. I'll go through the equipment list as we go through, but really all you're going to need is something to mix this all up in, and something to bake your cupcakes in. So I'm going to be using the KitchenAid today. You can use a stand mixer or a hand mixer with a large bowl. Like I always say, if you're feeling strong, you can use some elbow grease with a wooden spoon and a bloom whisk. My arms get a bit tired from that. But you'll also need, just to bake your cupcakes in, a deep muffin or cupcake tray. These are the ones with good depth, so when you put your cupcakes in, they are supported, rather than the old-fashioned fairy cake ones that are quite shallow, which I call a mince pie tin. So you'll need one of those, and obviously your cupcake cases, whatever they look like. So I'll just pop these to one side for the moment. Make sure I don't knock over my drink and my coffee. So my coffee has been sat there all morning. Oh dear. So we're going to be making these up in the stand mixer with the paddle attachment with the beater blade, and say you can use a hand mixer if you prefer, or in the spoons. So for our cupcakes, it's a really simple standard recipe where we're going to cream our butter and sugar together, and then add in our wet, and then add in our dry ingredients. So I'm going to start off with the our butter straight in there, and also our sugar. Remember, I'm doing a half recipe, so 200 grams of each. I've just scattered some sugar on that. I'm still getting used to this. I'm going to pop that down and put this on, and we'll give it a mix up. Start on slow to begin with. So for the butter then, like I say, it's slightly softened, and that one makes it easier for the butter and the sugar to cream together nicely. You've not got to put too much work in, but it also helps create that really creamy texture. It breaks down the fats within the butter, so they disperse really nicely in the cake mixture. Like we're talking on Wednesday, we're talking about reverse creaming method, where we do the dry and then add the butter, and the butter then coats the gluten. This is also very similar. By having it soft, it means it's not clumpy. We can get a really nice texture that when we add the other ingredients, they all come together nicely. So I'm just going to stop that for a moment and we'll have a scrape down. And you can see it clumps up to start with. Let's get you back in the bowl. I'm just going to scrape down. And what I haven't done, I normally do, is add a little drop of milk to this just to help it. So I'm going to pop this back on. I'm going to still getting used to a new kitchen. I'm going to pop that up and I'm just going to get a little bit of milk. I'm just going to add a splash there. Now the milk isn't adding any wetness or anything like that to it. It's just helping everything combine in here nicely. I'm going to take that up a bit more. I'm going to give it a scrape down in a minute. Now, if you don't want to use butter, you can use a baking spread if you want to, like a stalk or a margarine. They've come on a long way. You can get buttery flavoured ones as well. Now, the thing you need to remember when you're using those, if they do have a higher water content, they will slacken really quite easily. They work. People love them, you know, they're there for a reason. But they will do have a higher water content. So you might see your cake puff up a bit and then sink a little bit. But also in that same vein, with having that water content in, it does have them puff because that's what's helping that's what gives us our ride. I'm just going to take that and we'll scrape down. I haven't used the small bowl on the KitchenAid before, so this is a new experience. It's quite a bit wider. If anybody has a KitchenAid, our other one had seen back the days. Okay. So it's in a good place for me. I'd probably whisk it a little bit more, but actually it's nice and soft. There's no lumps in there. It's easily spreadable. So I'm going to stop that there. And I'm going to add my eggs one by one. So again, remember my eggs are at room temperature. And that helps break everything up, those protein strands in your eggs are working then with everything, especially when we get to adding the flour in. And when you add your first egg, it might look like it's split, it might look like it's curdling. Don't panic. It's perfectly fine. And that's another reason why we do try and have our eggs at room temperature, or all our ingredients at room temperature. If you put cold eggs into a butter sugar mix that you've creamed, it can shock them with the cold of the egg, which is again why you might end up curling. But you can bring it back together. Mine has a little. It just the way I would say the cookie crumbles, but we're making cupcakes. But that's fine. So we'll add a little bit of a flour in a minute. I'm going to pop this on. I'm popping this on. I don't normally use it with the old one, but because it's new and I'm not quite sure on this bowl, we put the cover on. Yeah, no, I wouldn't go much faster than that with this size bowl. That started everything coming together. I am going to scrape it. It is A bit curdled, but that's fine. Like I say, these things never. You can't always prevent it. But I'm going to just add a spoon of my flour, and that. Let's put. I'm not adding all the flour in at this moment. I just want to bring. Oh, look at me, all fingers and thumbs. I just want to bring my flour, my egg mixture together, and that flour will help you do that. Hindsight, I'd probably have used the bigger bowl. We have two, but one's in the dishwasher. But that's fine. And then now I've got that mixture there, I'm just going to add my flour. This flour is so fine. So adding our flour, remember this is self-raising flour, it's already got the raising agent in. I'm not adding any extra baking powder or anything for this, because that particular self-raising flour is quite potent. We still haven't added in our yogurt and our coffee, but don't worry, what I have just popped in there is our cocoa powder. And let's say the cocoa powder can be quite drying, and you'll see that as you start, once you add it to your ingredients, your batter might look quite thick. So I'm just going to give this a really good mix, and then we'll add these two together. So we've got our cupcake mix on the go here. See how quickly that one is? We've got into that really quite quickly. I'm just going to get rid of that now. Remember I said this cocoa powder is quite dark. You can see it. It looks and smells like Oreos. It really does. I'm just going to give it a good mix through. Now, it looks a good cake batter, but remember, we haven't put all the fat that we need in there. We've put that cocoa powder in there, which does make it, which can dry it out. So we've got 2 ingredients left to add in. I'm not sure I like this bowl on the kitchen end. And they are our sour cream or natural yogurt. So I'm going to add that in first. There we go. And then I'm going to add my coffee. Now with this, I just need a tiny drop of cold water, which I will just do here. Nope, that's our 30 minutes. Let me just press the button. We'll be back. We are still here. Canon still don't have a solution to that. So we've got our coffee, and I've got some cold water, and I'm just adding a tiny drop to make that, there's a spoon, into a little bit of a paste. Remember, you don't need to add the coffee if you don't want to. It's just going to bring out that chocolate flavour. Just mix your coffee. If you're using a fine coffee, ground coffee, instant coffee powder, it dissolves quite quickly. That's a coffee, instant coffee is slightly lumpy. I like the Millicano or the Nescafe Zero works really well. You can get espresso powder as well. You can, if you want to, you could put a shot of cooled espresso in, but I find this is the best way. So let's just add that in. Just scrape that off. We can't get to that stop. And that's the final whiz through. So that's it. Our cakes are ready to go in the oven once we've portioned this out. So I'm just going to stop that there. We don't want to over whip it or whisk it. If we overdo that, we'll be undoing all that good work that we've done by creaming the butter, the sugar, the eggs, and adding all the ingredients and being careful with it. If we over whisk at this point, we can activate all that gluten in the flour, and you can end up with quite a dense cake. We want to keep it nice and light, so don't overdo it at this point. So now this is ready to be portioned up, and then we can pop them into the oven. But we'll do that. Whilst we do that, we'll get our oven on to preheat. So this is a 180, 360 degree Fahrenheit, 180 C, 350. And they're only going to be going in for like 15 to 20 minutes. Let's get that up. So while that preheats, we'll get our cupcakes served up. That's all. I'm trying not to drag my arm through everything. Let's scrape down. You see now, as I scrape this off here, it's a lot, it's not as thick as it was. It's a little bit easier to do than what it was before we added that yogurt and the coffee in. There's something about baking. It just feels quite therapeutic. I'll pop that towards it. And we'll just give that a final whiz of our own. Make sure whenever you do, you scrape, just give the bottom a little bit of a scrape. Make sure you've got no flour or residue sat in the bottom there all on its own. I just thought I'd got a little bit of the sour cream not mixed through. So then, let's get rid of some of these dirty dishes. So we're using our deep cupcake tray and just regular muffin cupcake cases. You can use cupcake cups. I was going to use them, but the ones I've got are bright gold and it might look a bit weird. So we're going for white cases here. They look like they're square because they've been in a square box. That's fine. When we put them in and we put our they're square. How bizarre. They'll sort themselves out. Now I've done a half batch here, so you might get 6 to 8 out. I'm going to start with 6 and see how we go. You can portion this out using your just a spoon if you want. If you've got an ice cream scoop, these are really handy to do it. They're just about the right size. So you can scoop although this one is, I thought it was going to work for me today, but it's temperamental. It keeps getting, so don't put them through the dishwasher. This would be my number one tip for your ice cream scoop. And I'm just doing 1 scoop to 1 case. Well, actually, we might get quite a fair bit out of one of these mixes. I'm just going to make sure they've all, a couple of them have got a little. In that. I'm going to add another 2. Might even get 3. Is that risking it? That's risking it for a biscuit, isn't it? Or a cupcake in this case. I'll just put the spatula to one side. Only thing, I love using chocolate. I love using this dark cocoa, but the only thing is, it's quite messy. I think we'll be, yeah. We're a bit fingers and thumbs today. I don't know why. So I'm just gonna. I'm not gonna. Haven't got quite enough for another cupcake, but I am going to just scrape out what I've got here in the bowl. Just make sure everybody's got enough. So you want to fill them 2/3 full. Don't be tempted to get them to the top of the case or much more than that. You want them to have room to grow. You don't want them to be exploding over the side. You want them to be, like I say, about 2/3 full. And that's what we've got here. Let's get rid of those. Wow. So these are now ready to go in. They'll work themselves out. Our oven is ready. It's really quickly. So let's pop that in. So at 180, 350 Fahrenheit, we're going to put it on for 15 minutes to start with. No, come on. This is a diving thing. So, and then we can, if we need to have a little bit more time, we will do. But I don't think we'll need to do much. Just going to give my bench a little bit of a wipe down. So whilst that's in, I'll talk you through just the cherry filling that I've done. We're not going to do that because it takes, you need to let it cook down a little bit. A little bit of a slurp. And then we'll make the buttercream. So you can see all the components and how they'll go together. Still a little bit warm. I'm going to pop back to the recipe. The ingredients, and we'll just then talk about this. So in here, I've got a cherry filling. So thickened syrupy sauce, some black cherries that have cooked down with a little bit of extra sugar and some corn flour just to thicken it up with a little bit of our cherry liqueur. I've used cherry brandy. You can use kirsch, and like I say, if you don't have any of that, the Chambord is a really good alternative. So what I have here then is, I won't put it up because it's still quite syrupy, is this beautiful silky cherry filling. You could use this for a cherry pie as well. And I've used tin cherries. You can use frozen cherries. You can use fresh cherries if you want. If you're using fresh cherries, remember, if you make sure they're at room temperature, stone them first, and cut them in half. Excuse me, you can get a cherry stoner thing, but I just cut them in half and pull the cherry off. Frozen ones will already be done, and so will tinned ones. And I find the tinned ones as well, you've also got part of the syrup that you need there. So if you buy the black cherries in syrup, which you can easily get in the supermarkets, which I've got, you don't have to faff around with water and more sugar and lemon juice and all of that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit of a quick tip hack, but also cherries in syrup that are already tinned tend to be a lot more cheaper than buying fresh cherries, which, you know, we're coming into cherry season. You can get them, but you pay a lot of money for them. So if you want to do this and you're looking at budget, get the cherries in syrup in a tin. All you're going to do is put all of the cherries in the syrup into a pan with the caster sugar and the corn flour, and mix it in straight away. Because if you don't mix the corn flour, once you add it in, it will start clumping, and you'll get sort of yellow, white lumps in your cherry mixture. Add the kirsch, and then you're ready to go. Put it straight on to the hob, and I put this on the hob on a low to medium heat, and then just let it do its thing. I just leave it to cook down, and stirring occasionally. You don't want it to catch, but it will start to bubble and start to simmer. Don't be tempted to whack it up. If you whack it up, you'll burn all the sugars, and it will all become sticky and gloopy, and you'll get that burnt texture. So low to medium heat for a gentle simmer for about, I think this took me it's about 7 to 10 minutes, let's be honest. This is why I've not done this now for you. And then, but you're not reducing it down so you've got no liquid left. You're reducing it to a point where your liquid is nice and thick and shiny. It's not thick where it's gloopy. But what you do is when you do that, and it just coats the back of your spoon, like you can see there, coats the back of my wooden spoon. It's still a little bit runny, but as you see, it's not liquidy, like really liquidy runny. It's like a syrup run. And the reason why we do cook it down and we add the corn flour and we add the caster sugar rather than just using it straight out the tin is that syrup, when the cherries in the tin, that syrup is quite loose. It's quite watery. So we're just thickening it up a little bit, and we use corn flour rather than any gelatin or something like that. And this is it, and it smells lush. And I could just dive straight into that. So this will be our filling. The one thing with the cherries in the can is they are whole, so you can chop them up before. But I find as you cook, you can just break them up a little bit, squish them out with your spoon as you do that. So this is going to be our filling. Like I say, you don't have to do that. You could use a cherry jam. You can get black cherry jam, morello cherry jam if you want to, and just add that into the center of your cupcake. Or you can use things like the maraschino cherries. These are the ones you tend to have in cocktails. But these ones and the ones that you get in the little beautiful white jars they're dark. They're not like the bright red cocktail cherries. These are dark. I'm just going to get a spoon and show you these. I'm not going to use them for this. I might use them for decoration. But they're very similar to, you can't see because it's against me. There we go. They're very similar to what we've done, but they're cherries that are here tend to be smaller, and they tend to be expensive, which is why I go with making my own. They are, however, delicious. But they are also in a syrup very similar to the one that we've made for with the cherries in a can. And you've got that tartness of the cherries. The cherries are sweet, but they are tart, and it's that tartness that works with our chocolate cake and our buttercream and things. So once you've made this, you can put it to one side and allow it to cool. This is why I've made this as well first. Allow it to cool. As it cools, it will thicken up, and then we can put it to be whenever we're ready to use it. If you don't use all of it in your cupcakes, you can put it in a sealed container in the fridge. It will last for a couple of days. It's great poured over ice cream, vanilla ice cream, or you can use it for a crumble with some apples and some blackberries, or you can just eat it as it is if you want to. So that's that. I'm going to leave that there for the moment. Our cakes are cooking. They're looking good. Leave them to it. So whilst they're finishing, and I'll get on and make our toppings for our buttercream. Just whilst we've got those ingredients back up, we'll just have a look. So for the topping here, we're using icing sugar, salted butter, again at room temperature, our double cream, and some vanilla extract. So there are 3 ingredients. Let's move these bits out of the way. I might add a drop of kirsch in it as well. I've got a little bit left in my jug. Now, Black Forest gateaux, Black Forest cakes tend to be a whipped cream, just a sweetened whipped cream. We want this to hold itself really well. We don't necessarily want it to flop, and we can whip cream and pipe that on, and it's perfect. It looks good. It tastes amazing. The chocolate, the cream, the cherries, but it will wilt. It will soften, and it will eventually collapse and run down the side of your cake. So if you're looking for something what you're going to put out on display, or you're going to give for a gift, or you want to serve and you don't want it to run, then we're going to use a whipped cream buttercream. So we're going to use the best of both worlds. We're going to get the cream in there, but we're also going to get the structure from the buttercream here. You can do a stabilized cream, which would just be pure cream that doesn't collapse, but that does require you to add gelatin in. And I find, although it doesn't necessarily add taste, it doesn't taste right. And if you watch Bake Off or especially Bake Off the professionals, when they talk about you've got too much in there and it's bouncy, that's how it can taste. So not for me. So we're doing a whipped cream buttercream. So let's get back to full mode. And we're going to do that again with the stand mixer. You can do it with a handheld mixer if you want. And again, with a balloon whisk. But I find for my buttercreams or anything like this, a stand mixer is great, because what we're going to do is, before we add anything into it, is we're just going to whip our butter up. So we're going to use the balloon whisk attachment. I'm just going to get a clean spatula. And we're going to add this in. And there we go. Can't get caught on that guard. And what we're going to do is we're going to start this on low, and then we're going to whisk it up. And by whisking the butter, we are really going to town on it. We're really creaming it. We're making it really light and airy, and starting to incorporate that air into the butter at this point. So it takes a little while. It takes a few minutes. And at first you think, it's just creaming the butter. But as it starts to whip and the butter becomes softer, you get more in there. It becomes paler, it becomes smoother. It almost looks like a really thick whipped cream or a frotted cream. But this is sort of what helps it keep that buttercream light. buttercream this way, you know, we're not doing a French meringue or a Swiss meringue where we're heating and adding hot sugar. But this is the simplest, it's just butter and sugar. But if you don't whip your butter up enough, it can feel really claggy and really dense. And that's not just when you're eating it, but when you're piping it. You can feel quite a lot of resistance in the buttercream as you pipe it. So by whipping the butter up, getting that air in it, making it really creamy, we sort of counteract a lot of that. This has started, but I'm going to give it a scrape down. This is still quite solid. I'd like to think it's because my butter was not, you know, it was nice, but I just thought it went really cold overnight. And I left my butter out thinking I'll leave it out overnight. It would be perfect. And yes, it is soft and it is lovely. But I've just realised how cold it was in here last night. So it probably hasn't helped. But we're still going with the butter. So I can see on the cakes, you probably can't quite see from there. They've got a beautiful dome rise at the end. They've got 3 minutes left. I'm not sure. So I'm going to do no shooting, which is not there. I'm going to lift this out. And when your butter is whipped, it shouldn't be, it shouldn't feel stiff, or it should be really smooth and easy to use. I'm going to just scrape that down. And I'm just going to add, a bit like we did with the cake, I'm going to add a little bit of my cream. Not too much. Just leave that there for a moment. But just to help it. So once we've done that, we're going to add our icing sugar and a cream and a vanilla extract, just a bit by bit. And it's whipping up, and you can see it. It will start to. It goes lighter. If you want a really light buttercream without adding any purple colouring to counteract the yellowness, use a butter that's naturally pale. So the European butters tend to be better at the Lerfax and Presidente. Things from the UK where we our cows love it, and we have beautiful yellow butter, and it's the grass and all of that. Anchor, what's the one in there? Anchor, country life butter. They tend to be very yellow when you look at them. They do a lot of the supermarket butters. It's nothing wrong with them. It's just that they're more yellow because of how our cows are fed. There we go. So I've got a lovely light soft butter there. I'm just going to scrape all down. So I'm going to do this in bits. I'm not going to add all my butter, all my icing sugar and all my cream at once. I'm going to add it in sections. So icing sugar is a mess. let's be honest, it gets everywhere. So rather than measuring it out, I measure it down. Basically, I know what I'm starting with, so I will make this on my scales 0. I know I need 300 grams of it. So as I remove my it, I will see a minus going on my scales, and when I get to minus 300, then I know I've got the right amount. You can, of course, weigh it out if you want. I just find it's messy. Most icing sugars as well, unless they've been stored somewhere damp, will not need sifting. They won't need anything like that. So I'm going to start with, no, you can see I've picked this up slightly, but I'm still on the scale. I'm going to make that 100 grams. There we go. That's my first 100 in. And I'm going to add a dash of my, I am all fingers and thumbs today. I apologise. Just going to add a dash of my vanilla extract. So it's about a teaspoon on my caps. And before I put this on and it all goes everywhere and it makes a mess, I'm just going to gently fold these together. And it just saves getting that big cloud of ice as you turn the whisk. It's going to be the bane of that catch on this. Again, start off low. If you whack your whisk straight up to full speed, you're still going to get an icing sugar cloud. But do it this way. There we go. And you can see it coming together as well. And that's why having that butter really nice and smooth just helps it, because the icing sugar dries it out very, very quickly. So that's our first lot. Let's just have a scrape down there. And then we're going to add some more. I'm just going to leave that there. I'm at minus 100. Right, well, there we have everything happening at once. We'll come back to that in a second. Let's just have a look. Okay. Oh, wow. So they've got there's our 30 minutes, which is where's the thing? There we go. Oops, sorry. So our cakes are there. They are nicely baked. We've got a lovely dome on them. Some of them have got a little bit of a peak, but that's fine. But when I touch them, the top of them, they spring back. They're not soft and sort of falling in on themselves. And when I push on them, it's not staying there. They spring back. So I'm going to pop these over here. to cool in the tin for a few minutes, and then we'll put them onto a cooling rack. And let's get this buttercream finished. So I've added more icing sugar in. This time, rather than putting any vanilla extract in, I'm going to start adding my cream in. I'm going to put half of that in. This is thick, heavy cream, double cream. Just give that, like I said, a fold in. Just to get that icing sugar combination started off. And whip it through. So now, not only is the icing sugar combining with the butter, we're whipping the cream. Now, we've not whipped the cream and added the whipped cream in, because we then run the risk of over whipping the cream. So by doing it this way, the cream is whipping with the butter and the icing sugar and doing its thing. I'm just going to notch that up. We've got a little bit of icing sugar left and a little bit of the cream to add through. Normally when we're making a buttercream, we're adding a 1:2 ratio. So what we ever add of butter, we add twice of icing sugar. But in this instance, because we want the cream and that's the fat and we don't want it to be heavy, we want to keep it light, we've used half of the icing, half of the butter, and then we've topped that up with the cream to give us that combination. Keeps it nice and light. So let's just get that off there. Oops. I've just got a little bit of icing sugar in the bottom here that hasn't combined, and that's sort of just standard. So that's what I'm just bringing that through now. And then I've got a little bit of icing sugar left to do. So I'm all a bit fingers and thumbs today. I'm sorry, I was not very organised. I think we are going to end up doing these on a Wednesday night. It feels a little less running around like a headless chicken on a Sunday morning. Right, that's our icing sugar all in there. So I'm just going to close that up and get rid of it. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of the scales as well. So we've got the last of our cream. Make sure we get all of that in, because that's important. And when using a double cream, because it whisks up, don't use a light or a single cream. We want the richness of that cream there. You can use a whipping cream instead, but don't use a single because it won't whisk up. And it's a little bit naughty. We wouldn't normally do it, but I'm going to add a touch of the kirsch cherry brandy, that I've got left over, just to give it an extra kick. You don't have to. That's just me. So let's do our fold and put it on for a really good last whisk. So now we've got everything in there. I'm just going to let it go for a little while. Let it do its thing. Give it a good couple of minutes to whisk up. And you want to do that. That's part of what makes the buttercream nice and light and easy to use, is that we've given it time to whisk up. We've given it time to do its thing. Otherwise, it's just quite solid. Now it's happy. I'm going to give it a stir down straight down in a moment. Right over. So whilst that does its thing, that's all the components. That's everything. We've got our cakes, we'll bring them out in a minute. We've got our filling and we've got our buttercream. Love that as it goes. So I'm going to give that straight down. Oh, and that just flick. So this now is really come together. It's nice and light. I'm going to keep it going for a little bit longer. Let's just show you that. Because this has got whipped cream in, if you do have any left over, you will need to keep it in the fridge. It doesn't, you can't keep this out again if it's there again. I'm just going to take. It's really light. It's so lovely. I got a hint just of that kirsch there because that's what I put in. So I'm just gonna. Leave that. He's done. So let's look at our cakes. They are warm. I don't think we're going to be able to fill them, but they are nice and easy to handle now. You want to make sure these are 100% cool before you do anything with them. And the reason being is if you try and pour that center out, now they're really still soft and warm and it's lovely, but you'll cause them just to, not cause them, but they can fall apart a bit. So we're not going to core them now, but I tend to use an apple corer to get my filling in there. Just put it in just as you core an apple, put it down and pull the center out. Gives you a nice big column for you to put your filling in, however that may be, whether it's the jam, the cherry filling, or the maraschino cherries. Or you can use a knife and just cut through with that. What I tend to like is, if I'm doing it with a knife, is to try and mimic what the apple corer is doing. So I get a nice column of filling in there rather than just old-fashioned fairy cake way, taking out the top. Because what happens then is you just take out the top and you've got all this cake and you get all the filling in the first couple of bites and then you've got the cake at the bottom. If you think about Black Forest cake, it's got layers of chocolate and cherry and cream and chocolate and cherry and cream. We can't replicate that with the cupcake, but by giving a nice core depth all the way through to almost the bottom of the cake, we've got plenty of space to put our cherries and our filling in there. They are not warm. They are warm, sorry. I'm just looking to see if there's one that I can, or I'd be happy doing. She said, it's one of them things. It's just like, which is the best cake? Here's me saying don't do it, but here's me also saying maybe I will. I'm going to pop these guys over here to cool. I've got 7. So I got 8 out of half a batch. That's not bad. But so we've got our little cupcake then. Bless him. I just want to see how this cores for you. So ever so gentle. Don't try and force it in or put crumbs everywhere. But you know what I said about getting a nice depth for our filling? I mean, we've got a good inch or so there. just to get rid of the crumbs. I'll just find somewhere to put it, but I'm not very organised. Now you can keep this, you can eat it, you can keep it. I like to put a little bit of it just back in the top to seal in that filling. But this is what I say, it started to crumble a little bit at the top where it's obviously not been ready for me to do that. But with our cherry filling then, probably the easiest way is to get some of the syrup in there as well. So that'll soak in. We've got the cherries in. Oh, tastes heavenly. And I'm going to just cut that and gently push it back in the top. There. Now, this is still warm and we've just done that so I can show you how I would fill it. So I'm not going to put the buttercream on. But what I would do with this now is I would pipe a beautiful swirl or just layer it on. Just don't be worried about it. Of that. On a classic scale, I might put some chocolate strands. Remember, they'd always be around the outside of a Black Forest Gâteau. And top with another cherry or maybe a fresh cherry or maybe a cherry from here and drizzle the syrup over. And that's effectively what I'll do when I get to that point. But they're too warm to put the buttercream on at the moment. But they taste amazing as a cake. It's beautiful, it's soft, it's chocolatey, it's rich. And I know that with those cherries, it'll be beautiful. So let me put those to one side and that to one side. And I'll just give you a final recap. Thank you very much for being with me today. Sorry, it's a bit all over the place. I was really excited for these and they taste amazing and I love them, but I've just been a little bit fingers and thumbs. Maybe it's Sunday. Maybe it's a Sunday thing. But anyway, thank you very much for joining me this morning. We've made Black Forest Cupcakes. I will be putting these together when they're nice and cool and taking some pictures and sharing the recipe with you and all my top tips for success and all your frequently asked questions over on the blog. And as usual, I will let you know that way as soon as it is there. But they are a really easy recipe to make. Like I say, if you're not all fingers and thumbs like me today, they come together really, really quickly. And I've made half a batch. So you can see how easy it is to cut the ingredients list in half to make a half batch of the recipe. And actually still get quite a few out. You know, if you only want a few cakes, a small batch, then they are there. Thanks, Rachel. Thank you for joining as well. And really, really simple. They taste amazing. They are one of the best flavor combinations out there. But yeah, these are the ingredients that you'll need. I will sort myself out and figure out, but I've gone all a bit. I'm having a bit of a mind blank. It's been a mental couple of weeks of work and my brain has just gone quite obviously now. Yeah, your ingredients are very standard. You can do this really on a budget. You don't have to buy the fancy liqueurs, the fancy cherries and all of that. You can really do it nice and simple. You can adapt the cupcakes for something else. The filling you can use for pies and crumbles and tarts. And the topping, that buttercream is, I could faceplant in that because it's just light and creamy and it's a beautiful alternative to a vanilla buttercream. So Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. Next week, I will put it to the vote, but I have bought all the ingredients for a custard cream cheesecake. I think the world is now all caught up with Biscuit Week from Bake Off. I certainly have. And they made custard creams, and custard creams are one of my favourite. So I'm thinking we're going to go for a cheesecake next week, but I will put it out to the vote as usual. But wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for joining me. Everybody that's been in, been out, been back. And thanks for everybody that stayed with me all the way through. Muchly appreciated. We, I think, are going to go to a Wednesday evening. Like I say, it's a little less stressful for getting everything ready and a little bit less manic. But again, I will put it out to the vote. So I will let you know when we'll see each other again soon. It won't be this Wednesday. It's my birthday. But wherever you are in the world, have a lovely rest of your weekend. Be kind to each other. Take care. And I will see you very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.